Welcome to the show, Tanya.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yep. My favorite question to ask is, what's your sober date?
December 18th, 2018.
Okay, so you're coming up on 6 years.
Yes.
That is an awesome accomplishment. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm very proud of myself. And
What I'll do is, if you remind me, I'll release it on your anniversary.
oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll release it on your anniversary if you just remind me.
That'd be
Your
great.
anniversary falls on a Wednesday.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because the only reason I know that is because Friday the 13th in December, there's going to
Oh,
be a Friday the 13th.
okay.
So 2 days before that, I did the math real quick. So yeah, it comes out on a Wednesday. So I'll release it on your anniversary for six
That'd
years.
be that'd be great. That'd be
Um,
great.
what was going on December 17th of 2018?
Um, Actually, not much. I was just, going to work, came home, and December 18th was a Tuesday. And on Tuesdays, I didn't start working until 11:30. And so, you know how alcoholics are. It's like, I can have a drink and then I'll go to work. I'll be just fine. Um, I can't just have a drink. So by 10 o'clock, I was just blasted. And I called in sick. It's like, oh, I'm so sick. I can't go to work. And I wasn't able to drive at the time because I had gotten a DUI and went to jail and all that. Um, so I called an Uber. And the funny thing is, the town I lived in was a dry town. So I had to get an Uber to take me outside the town limits to get alcohol. And he did. He waited outside. I went in, I got it, um, went home, drank more. And then I had the great idea of, you know what? I'm going to start a fire in the wood burning stove. And I did. And I guess I went to stove to fire and some sparks came out. And I lived in a house at the time with a hoarder. So that was not good. But I went back upstairs, and the next thing I know, it was like a split level, and I look downstairs and I look at the stove and I see it's just on fire. And I'm wrong. But I called 911. They came. They took care of the fire. They took me to the hospital, and I remember the hospital was like, we would like to admit you until you're sober, kind of like a detox. And I was like, no, 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 I'm fine. And I signed myself out of the hospital that night. And then I got another Uber, and I went to a hotel because I couldn't go home. And but before I went to the hotel, I made the Uber stop at a liquor store and get some more. And I remember I got to the hotel and I opened it, and I was just, I don't know, I was just done. At that point, I was done. And I literally fell on my knees and I just started crying and praying. And I was like, I'm going to die. I will die. And I took that bottle and I poured it out, and that was it. That was literally it. And I always say, by the grace of God, I was literally saved because I know I would have died.
Yeah.
I had lost everything from my marriage of 21 years. My children didn't want anything to do with me. My grandkids weren't allowed to see me because they was always drunk, and which I can understand now. Then I was like, oh, I don't know what their problem is, but I mean now I can understand that. I wouldn't want my grandkids around somebody like me. You
Yeah.
know,
Did your house catch on fire?
so the wood burning stove was like on the low. It was like a split level, but like one level and then the split level on the side. I don't know if you've seen these houses.
Yeah.
And like I said, the person I lived with was a hoarder, and so there was lots of papers and wood flooring and just junk. And so the stove engulfed, and then there was stuff that was close to the stove that burned. And but it wasn't like the house did not burn down because at least I still had that, I got to call 911. So they come and put out this fire, and then yeah, and apparently in the ride to the hospital in the ambulance, I had like some kind of, I don't know, rage or something. It
What
was,
was that? Can you talk up a little bit?
oh, I'm sorry. Apparently in the ambulance going to the hospital, I had like rage or something, and I was kicking them and hitting them, and yeah, it was not good. It was
Yeah.
really not good.
Now,
And
where were you born?
I was born in Germany.
Oh, okay. That's so funny. My mom and I were just talking that I need to get a German person on the show. Um, because I've interviewed Canada, I've interviewed Costa Rica, Colombia, Ireland, UK, Scotland, Netherlands, Sweden, and
Nice.
I have a pseudo sister that is from Germany. She lived
Oh,
with us
nice.
in an exchange program when I was a kid. And
Nice.
we visited her a few years ago. We visited her in Berlin. Um, she's from Osnabrück originally.
Okay. I'm
And
from I'm from down more like southwest, like is like that little depth where I grew up about 10 minutes away from France and like an hour from Luxembourg and then like an hour and a half from Belgium. So right in that little thing. So
I
yeah.
loved Belgium.
Yeah,
Um,
it's pretty. I love Luxembourg even more because they're just so genuine, and because we would always go there to buy cigarettes because they're much cheaper in Luxembourg than they are in Germany. So, and gas too. So we would literally take trips to Luxembourg and just get cigarettes and gas and get some good food, get some good baguette, and go back home. So
yeah.
yeah, it's funny. And people are always like, "Oh, you're German, so you." Well, I didn't have a drinking problem in Germany at all. I could drink like a lady. I had no issues with drinking.
Have you ever been to
Um,
Ghent?
Back home, yes.
Yeah.
So I came to the States when I was 32.
Okay, so you were born and raised in Germany
Yes.
then.
I also all my whole family, all my brothers and stuff, my sister, they're all still there.
Okay. And in Germany, the drinking age is 18, I believe.
There isn't really one.
There isn't really one. When did you start drinking?
I remember the first time I was drunk, I was 12, and it was at my friend's birthday party, and I stayed the night, and we got drunk, and my dad picked me up the next day, and he had to stop like every 5 minutes because I had to throw up, and that was kind of a cure for me for the till then. And
And how old
um,
were you again?
12,
12. Okay.
12,
That's when my drinking really took off. I
yeah.
started drinking at 11, and by the time I was 12, I was drinking for the taste.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, it
I
was it was just social drinking, like because it's not a big deal in Germany if you're 15 or 16 and no one cares. Like um my son's 16th birthday, we were actually in Germany on vacation for a month to see my family. And since my kids all were born there and grew up there and went to German school for a while, um, so all his friends from the town came and they're like, "Hey, we got a case of beer. Is that okay if we drink?" And I was like, yeah, of course, but do it in the backyard so I can at least have an eye on you guys. Um, it's just not a big deal. So we don't really have that problem of young people being alcoholics that much because it's not a big deal. You know what I mean?
yeah.
nobody bats an eye. When my parents-in-law, they came over to Germany for our wedding, my first husband, and we went to this Italian restaurant, and there was two teenagers sitting at the bar drinking a beer, and my father-in-law was like, "What are they doing?" I was like, "They're having beer." Like it's just normal. Nobody, there's no, do you have an ID or anything? Like I would always go and get cigarettes and stuff for my brothers and my dad, and you know my dad was actually, he was an alcoholic, but he stopped drinking um before I was born. So I'm actually the youngest of 10 kids.
That was my next follow-up question is brothers or sisters?
Yes, I have 7 brothers, 2 sisters. So yeah, the chances of me dating was like slim to none. And I always joke that that's probably why I married an American, because they didn't know, because I would go to parties and stuff, and even if somebody was like would come up to me and talk to me, it was always, "Do you know who she is? She's Foreman's youngest." And then it was like, "Oh shit, yeah, yeah, she's got a lot of brothers, and they're all very big and very tall, and yeah, all my brothers are over 6'5", and they're all like, 2 of them were heavyweight Greek-Roman wrestler champions, and so yeah, nobody really, no.
Yeah. I know my sister had a tough time because she had 2 older brothers. I can't imagine if there was 6, 7 of us.
Yeah, it was, yeah, and
What was the age gap, Tanya, between the oldest and
so
you?
the oldest brother, so the oldest of all the children, is 16 years older than I am. And then it goes like the first 6, there was one every year, and then there was a gap, and then
All
it's
with the same parents.
yes, yes. So my parents, by the time my dad passed away in 99, and at that point my parents had been married for 46 years.
Wow.
So yeah, and then my
46
mom,
years, and that's a long time.
yes. So yes, all the same mom and dad, it was, yeah, very, very, I guess different. I guess people made it work and didn't give up so easily. I noticed that nowadays, um, marriage is kind of seen as like a dating thing. We'll get
Yeah,
married. If it doesn't work out, then we'll just,
get divorced.
yeah, and like my brothers, they're all been married for 40 years now, or, like for a really long time. Like they all been married once and that was it. And they're still with that person. And yeah,
And you've been divorced?
yes. I was married for 21 years. Uh, and we ended up divorcing. And then I met somebody else, and I thought, because faith is very important to me, and God is very important to me. So I thought, he's given me, I get another chance at this. But that didn't work out. So I'm actually in the process of moving, because he asked me to leave um, about a week ago now, week and a half ago. And well, he didn't ask, he said I should. So I did. Um, because I'm not going to stay somewhere.
You're not what?
I'm not going to stay somewhere where I'm not welcome.
Yeah.
So I took my son, and my youngest, he's 24, and but he still lives with me. He's autistic, so he lives with me, which is fine. Um, but he has my brother's genes. He's 6'8". He's a big boy. I mean, I'm tall too. I'm the shortest of all of them, and I'm 5'10". So
Yeah, it's a big family, literally and physically.
yes, very much so, very much so. Yes. So yeah, I'm actually planning to go back home next year. Um, to see my family. And they've been wanting me to, when my marriage ended, they wanted me to come home. And they said, look, just come home. But I have my other two children here, and they have their lives here, and they have kids, and I just didn't want to leave them. So I stayed. And now, of course, again, like you now you really need to come home. So, and I always make the joke, I'm like, because I can't vote, because I'm not an American citizen. I was like, hey, depends on how you guys vote. I might give back my green card because I don't want it. You can have it. I'm leaving.
So you where did you meet your first husband if you were still living in Germany and he was American?
In Germany, he was stationed there. He was in the military.
Okay.
We met at my job, actually. I was working in a bakery in a grocery store, and he came up to buy we call them Berliners. It's a filled donut. And he was in uniform, and I saw his name tag, and it cracked me up. I just started laughing. And I remember my coworker, she's like, what are you laughing about? And I was like, his last name's Ass. Because the last name was Butts. And I was cracking up. And he didn't find it very funny, but I thought it was hilarious. And that was like 2 days later, a friend of mine, I was supposed to go on a date, and then that person canceled. And a friend of mine called, and she's like, hey, do you want to go to this Club Spirit? And I was like, I've never been. I'll go. And I went, and I saw him there, and that was it. He was like, I thought you were cute, but I thought you were a bitch because you were laughing at my name. So little did I know I became one. So, yeah.
No, I think I loved going to Germany. I thought we went to my mom, Ergut or Ergot or something with an E is the first. We flew into Frankfurt,
Mm-hmm.
and then we went to a small town called like Ergot or something like that. It was all cobblestone roads. And then we went to Berlin, and then we went to Cologne.
Oh, Cologne's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, so we went to Cologne for a night, and then we went to Ghent, Belgium, which was I loved Ghent. I was drinking back then, and they have that bar where you have to give your shoe, and they give you a tall glass of beer.
Well, and the Belgian beer is like
delicious.
Yeah, and it has a lot of
alcohol
percent. Yes, a high percentage of alcohol to it. Because I remember we have the Bock beer in Germany, and before I met my husband, I was waitressing as a second job just to do something else too. And we would have the Bock Beer Fest. And it was basically like the Oktoberfest, but you can only drink that beer, and it has like 20% alcohol. Yeah. But we would get the dirndls, and we'd walk through there with like 10 mugs and just smell those mugs. And and from every mug he sold, I made some money. And then we also had a little contest going between the different waitresses on who can sell the most beer that night. And so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, those beers were strong too in Berlin. When I was in Berlin, we were in Berlin for 2 nights, and the one night we went to, I think it was called Oktoberfest, was the bar, and the waitresses walk around like you just described with those big mugs and carrying like 8 at a time, all by the handles and everything like that. And you're like, holy shit, how are they carrying all that? And then Ghent, it was beautiful. I got nice and drunk the whole time. Got my mom drunk, which was fun. She went bar hopping with us, and she got good and drunk. And then we went to Amsterdam, and that was more for me because I was a pothead.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely smoked a lot those 2 days that we were there. And then we flew back to Philadelphia from Brussels, because I'm from South Jersey, right outside of Philly.
Okay.
So, that's where I grew up. Right now I live in Pennsylvania in the middle of nowhere. but I
I
like
was
it.
actually just in Pennsylvania, middle for my birthday. That week, I was in Pennsylvania for, oddly enough, a wounded warrior retreat because my still husband is a veteran, and it was beautiful. It was. We were outside of Gettysburg,
Okay, I used to live around there.
and it was just, oh, it was just gorgeous. The weather was great. It was just really beautiful. I really liked it.
Where do you live now?
I live in Front Royal, Virginia.
Okay, so that's not far then. Virginia's not
No,
that far from.
no, and I live out here, and well, I just moved back here. I live with my daughter, and yeah, but it's beautiful here. It's right, Skyline Drive is right there. It's really beautiful. It's in the mountains, and right now it's because you get the leafers every weekend from the city that come out and they want to drive on Skyline Drive and they plug up the roads and they just, yeah, but they bring a lot of money for the town. So
Yeah.
we're happy about that. I just find it funny that they buy outfits and then you see them downtown and you're like, hmm, because they'll buy like the flannel shirts and the hiking boots and get out of the car with a DC license plate because DC is only an hour away, and you're like, yeah, I know you don't wear that every day.
Now, when you got married in the United States, or you got married in Germany?
We got married in Germany, and so we got married in Germany in the courthouse there, and had to have a translator, and had to have um, like a background check. I had to have a background check done through the military to make sure that I was kosher and that I was not like,
Some spy.
yes, yes. That was in 19, oh boy, when did I get married? 99.
Hmm.
Yes. I actually got married like 3 weeks before my dad passed away. And yeah, and then we got married and we actually stayed in Germany for, he was able, well, then the war started and everything. And so we were there for 8 years. He was still there, stationed there for 8 years. So we were married for 8 years by the time I came to America. And then we kind of had to because he was selected for flight school. So we had to move. Um, we
Back to
went to,
Virginia.
no, I had to move to what they call LA, Lower Alabama. So my very first time living in the United States was Lower Alabama. It was,
Culture shock.
yes, oh, there's my dog. He's trying to get comfortable. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, I thought, I always kind of jokingly say I thought I knew English.
You knew English, but you didn't know accent English.
No, I had no idea, but the people there, they were just great, and I loved it. I did have a little trouble trying to find a job because I had no idea that I have well, not a degree. I learned hotel and restaurant management in Germany, so I do have I had my exams and everything in that, but I didn't know that if you didn't go to college for something, it doesn't count in America. So they were like, well, if you take this course and this course and this course, I'm like, no, I worked in a hotel for 3 years. I learned everything from making a salad to making a bed, and getting duvet covers over pillows and stuff without making a wrinkle in the corners. I am not going to do that, and then it was actually kind of hard to get a job because I didn't have any job history in America. So my first job in America was actually at Cracker Barrel.
Was it what?
Cracker Barrel?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
How was
So,
your English?
excuse me?
How was your English?
It was already good because, like I said, where I grew up is a part of Germany that had been given to the Americans after World War II. So I grew up with Americans around me all the time. And my parents actually both were young children when during World War II, so they went through the war, and they would always tell us that after the war, my dad's family got to stay because they had a farm, so they wanted them to stay where they were, even though it was so close to France, because they needed to help out the war effort by growing the crops. And my mother's family, she was even closer to France. Her and her two sisters and her mother, my grandma, were taken to like northeast Germany, which later became East Germany. And my grandpa was fighting in the war. So, um, and then after the war, my mom was brought back with her family, with her mother. But they always told me that, or us, all of us children, that, school would be out and they'd come out of school and there'd be American soldiers giving them, even if it's just a boiled potato or some soup or something, but they always got something when they came out of school. And especially my father, they had these little, the little tiny Hershey bars. And I guess the GIs got those in their little
Yeah.
MREs.
Yep.
But they would give them out to the German kids. So he loved Hershey bars. I mean, that was just his thing. And after I married my husband and I was able to go to the commissary, and even before that, because I had American friends, they would bring the little Hershey bars. That was just his thing. And he was just the happiest man ever to just get.
I used to live in Hershey.
Ah, that's nice. That's awesome.
The whole town smelled like chocolate. And at every AA meeting, there would be a bowl of, all Hershey's candy. There would be a bowl of Hershey Kisses or the Hershey bars, the little, single ones.
Yeah.
They'd be in a bowl. So instead of walking into an AA and getting some like hard candy or something, it's Hershey candy at this AA meeting. And, I lived across from a Reese's factory, and which is like not good for someone who's a pothead and who can smell that chocolate all day long. It definitely wasn't good for my weight.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
But it was a cool town though. I enjoyed my time living there.
I haven't been there, so I gotta.
It's about 40 minutes north of Gettysburg.
Okay.
And that's where where I lived, and that was close to Gettysburg, was Hershey. So you move here when you're 32. How old are you now, Tanya?
I'm 51.
Okay, so you move here when you're 32.
Yeah.
And your husband gets, you stationed down in Alabama, and he's in flight school. How is that transition besides not being able to find work? You got two young kids, or do you have three young kids?
Yes. And it was hard. I felt lonely a lot because that had literally been the first time that I was not within driving distance to my family. And it was hard, and I had a hard time at first. And then I made friends in Alabama. When I started working, I made some friends, and that was nice. And then I met some other Germans, that lived there. But it's a very transitional base because basically you're just there while they go to flight school, and then you get sent off somewhere else. So it's very transitional for everybody. So depends on what aircraft they get, and because it takes longer to learn a Apache than it does a Chinook or a Black Hawk. So and then you get the clicks again once you they select the aircraft for you. So you might be friends with people during warrant officer school, and when you first learn how to fly the helicopter, which is a Huey, and then you get your selection of what the Army thinks you should be flying, and that goes off some personality tests that they have to do. And my husband at the time was selected for the Apache. So he started flying Apaches, and he started to have me study, and it was actually really hard. Um, it was because he had so much studying to do, and I mean, I studied with him because he would have these flashcards of the 5 and 9s, which is, emergency procedures, and it's a whole chapters. So I would help him out with that, and I think I can. I think I could land an Apache in an emergency.
Where did he get stationed after Alabama?
South Korea.
Oh, so you then moved you went from Germany. How long were you in Alabama for?
We were in Alabama for about 2 years.
Okay, so 2 years in Alabama, and then you up and leave with three young kids to South Korea.
And each time he had already been gone, so it was just up to me to do like all the moves and get everything situated, and like moving from Germany to the States, because I've lived in Germany all my life, so all my appliances were 220, and there's just stuff you can't take because you got a weight limit, and the weight limit goes by rank. And when we moved over there, when he was selected, he was an E6, so we got the weight limit of an E6, and he wasn't an officer yet, a warrant officer yet. So that would have been double the weight. But since, so I had to sell a whole bunch of stuff. Still had to um, deal with my kids. I had to fight with the government because he was actually in Iraq when he was selected to go to flight school. And then they sent him back to Germany and said, well, you got 2 weeks to, to sign out of everything and PCS to Fort Rucker, Alabama. But the problem is I can't get a visa without my sponsor, and he would have been my sponsor. So he gets back. That's the first thing we do. We go to Frankfurt to the embassy, apply for a visa, and they're like, well, why did you wait so long? Well, he's supposed to be here, and he literally just came back from Iraq yesterday. So, and then he had to leave. I didn't have a visa yet. And then they were like, the Americans were like, well, he's the sponsor and he's leaving. So, which means for me, it meant that my kids couldn't go to the American school anymore. I couldn't drive an American plated vehicle. I wouldn't get any of the BAH or anything. It would just be cut off. Like I would lose all privileges of being a spouse. And I was just like, no, this is not my fault. It was not, we didn't plan this for him to be in Iraq when you guys select him for to go to flight school. And especially that was like his third tour, back to back to back. And they're always a year long.
How was that on your drinking?
Like I said, in Germany, I didn't have a problem drinking. I was
okay. So this wasn't. I meant when you were in Alabama.
It kind of started in Alabama, and I think it was because I was just homesick and lonely, and it was something, and it really started taking off in South
Korea. Okay. How long were you in South Korea for?
4 years, 3.5, 4 years.
And did you even know the language? Did you know the language?
I didn't know anything about something. And we were kind of like the guinea pigs, because before that, only service members E7 and above were allowed to bring their spouses. And then they just changed it all and said, oh, everybody can come, even if you're, E2 or E3, you can bring your family now. And so we were kind of the guinea pigs for that. And my two older kids actually graduated high school in South Korea. So that was something pretty neat for them.
Yeah, so they can speak 3 different languages.
My son, my oldest, he picked it up real quick. He could read it, write it, speak it. He was really good. I always took him to the market with me because the first time I went to the market by myself, because I started to love kimchis, like all kinds of kimchis. And this lady, we call them ajimas, an older Korean lady, and she asked me if I wanted this kind of kimchi, and I was like, nah. But I didn't know that nah in Korean means yes. So she just starts putting it in the bag, and I'm like, I said, man. So that was another culture shock, basically moving to South Korea. And there was a lot of, yeah, some stuff that was just like, I, uh, I got my driver's
My
license.
stepson's Korean, half Korean or quarter Korean, whatever. He's part Korean,
Yeah,
and
it,
he loves kimchi.
oh, my son, well, all my kids love Korean food, but my youngest, he will eat kimchi. He will make his own little kimchi bowls or kimchi soup. He loves it. I buy it in the bucket, and he just goes to town. It's great,
Yeah,
and I like it too. So I really, that was one thing I always did wherever we lived, was learn how to cook that food. So I always enjoyed that a lot. So yeah, but Korea was very interesting. It was a lot of fun. I got my driver's license to drive there, and so I'm driving down the road, and I see cops behind me, and they have their lights on, and I'm like, oh, whew, I'm being pulled over. So I pull off to the side, and they just go by, and I'm like, okay, just wasn't for me. They weren't looking for me. A couple of days later, again, I'm driving down the road, and there's another cop, and low lights, and I'm like, shit, once again. And he drives by, and my downstairs, because we live off post. So I went downstairs, and I asked my neighbor. She knew some English, and I was like, this is happening. And she explained to me that no, 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 no. Korean cops, if they're on duty, their lights are on. But if the sirens is not on, you're good. And I was like, well, that would have been really helpful when I got my license, because I'm thinking I'm being pulled over here every time I get in the car. Yeah, and then I discovered soju.
what's that?
That is the Korean drink. That is what all Koreans drink. It is very cheap. It is tasteless unless you drink it after you eat something spicy, and then it gets sweet. But it will hit you. And we would go into, they call it the Ville, it's outside of the base, and they would make these soju bowls. And it's just plain soju, and they just put like some Kool-Aid flavor in there. But you drink them, and you drink it, and you drink it, and you drink it, and then all of a sudden it's, and and then one night I got pretty drunk, and um, I was sexually assaulted. And
By
after,
someone you knew?
no, no, it was a GI, but I didn't know. And after that is when it really took off. When I would literally, I mean, I went to get therapy, and I went to get help. It was just, yeah, here, take these pills. Oh, you're still not feeling better? Well, we'll just up the dose. And then I realized that if I start drinking, it makes it better. So, and I couldn't work because they have, especially overseas, they have tiers of who gets jobs. And me being a non-American spouse, I was like all the way on the bottom. So they have their SOFA agreement, which means that they have a certain percentage of jobs have to go to the local people, to the Koreans. And then it goes like, and then you have your spouses, and you have them, and da 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 da. And then I was, as a non-American spouse, I was just on the very low totem pole for that. I did, however, a friend of my then husband, he was Korean, but he was in the American Army, and he was also a pilot. And on the weekends, he taught older Koreans English. And so he asked me if I would like to volunteer and help him out. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And that was fun too. And one day we just realized that I was a German living in South Korea teaching Koreans English. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting, actually. But that was a lot of fun. A lot of the older ajimas and attaché is an older gentleman. And every Saturday, they would just come in with tons of food, and they would just feed us. we would just eat, and it was great. It
So
was a lot of fun.
if I can backtrack a minute to the assault, did you tell your then husband about it?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
So
I did.
and that's when you got into therapy,
Yes,
but it
and that's
wasn't really helpful. It was more
no, it was
was it
it was
psychiatrist?
yes. I
Okay.
actually had to go. I had to drive from where we lived in Pyeongtaek. I had to drive 2 hours to Seoul, and because that's where they had the people to do that, and it was once a month. And every time, if I wasn't better yet, then it was just, well, we'll just up the dose. We'll just up the dose. We'll just up the dose. So, and it didn't help. And one night we had gone to, it was like my husband's whole unit. We went to Seoul and we did a pub crawl. And of course, I got absolutely smashed and I lost my wallet. And that was a big deal, not because of the credit cards, but because I lost my military ID. Because without that overseas, you can't go online, you can't go on post, you can't go shopping, nothing, because you have to show that everywhere you go. So we went to the military police when we got back to where we lived, and I walked in, and there he was, just smiling at me, and I just lost it.
Did you tell your husband it was him?
No, because I knew he would have did something, and then it would have not been good. And he had a good thing going for him. You know, he just made warrant officer. He just finished flight school. You know, so I just didn't say anything. I just started crying and kind of threw up in my mouth. But after that, just the fact to know that a cop or military police, you know, that's when I really started. And I would literally start after my kids went to school in the morning, and I would get the boxes. And we had a
What's that?
little,
You're a little low again.
oh, I'm sorry. I would get the boxed wine, and we had a little shop at right next to where we lived. So by then we lived on post, and yeah, I would just go to the shop at, get another box, and he would never even know that I drank a whole one, you know. So
Yeah, I could see your drinking getting out of hand after that event. I mean, not only not only is it traumatic that event, but it's traumatic to run into your abuser again.
yeah,
And that's traumatic in itself. I host another show that I do on my channel called The Unlicensed Therapist, and I interview people about trauma they've been through. And to see your assailant again
hmm
in the wild and
and
smiling at
especially
you.
yes, and especially in that position, I think that is um what got me the most, because that smile was just kind of like, well, what are you going to do about it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of, oh, no one's going to believe you anyway. It was really, yeah,
Yeah,
that
because
was
he's
very,
basically a cop, right? You said he was
yeah,
military police. Yeah,
yeah,
so
he's a cop. Yes. So it was very, very surreal. And I started crying. Like I said, I threw up in my mouth a little bit. Um,
I can see your
very,
drinking escalating after that, and makes total sense to me. Because you had to keep it a secret to protect your husband,
yeah, absolutely.
and because it would have been even more traumatic if you would have told him and something would have came of it.
Hmm. Well,
So
I did tell him after we left Korea. So after Korea, we were actually supposed to go back to Germany, and I was actually very happy about that. And then they said, "Oh, they don't have the services for our our youngest son with autism." And I was like, "That's really weird, because he was born there and he was diagnosed there and he was in school there until he was 6 years old. So how could you not, you know?" And they instead sent us to El Paso, Texas. which might as well be another foreign country, to be honest with you. Finding a job was just, if you don't speak Spanish, it's just not going to happen. And luckily, the German army was there, so I was able to work for them. And then I worked for, and then they got the part where I was, they got taken to Oklahoma. So there was a German bakery in El Paso. And so then he asked me if I wanted to work, and I did.
Bringing some authenticity to working at a German bakery in Texas is an actual German girl.
Yes, it was very, and so it was me and then 3 other German ladies that worked in the bakery, but all the bakers, were from El Paso, and that kind of struck me as odd because they were born and raised in El Paso, which means they're Americans, and none of them spoke English. And I was just like, that's weird.
They all spoke German?
No, Spanish. Huh. And I remember one time I was working, and we had this little bell on the counter, and this lady walks in and she just immediately starts hitting that bell. Don't even give me a chance to walk out. And I walk out and she just Spanish. And I was like, I'm sorry, I don't speak Spanish. And she's like, why not? And I was like, well, because I speak English and German and some Korean, French, but not Spanish. And she says to me, well, this is a border city, so you should speak Spanish. Okay. So I asked her, I said, so if we're going to go by this logic, if I go across the border into Juarez, do they all speak English? She's like, no, that's different. No, it's not. No, why is that different?
Yeah.
I grew up in a border town of France and Germany, and I mean, yes, we had a lot of French in our German dialect, but it wasn't a prerequisite to speak French. So I actually left El Paso after 2 years.
You went to where?
I left El Paso after 2 years, and I came to Virginia with my son, with my youngest son. And my husband was still in the military then, and he was getting ready to retire after 20 years. And yeah, I said, I can't. I couldn't do it. I was in Walmart one time, and I was looking for something, and nobody spoke English. And finally I was like, is there a manager? And I talked to him. He's like, oh, it's over here. And he helped me, and he felt so bad that he gave me a $50 gift card. He's like, I'm so sorry. It's really hard to find people. And I'm like, yeah, but sorry, but America. So yeah, so I left and I went to Virginia, and then it kind of.
Why Virginia of all places?
So he was from Virginia. He was actually originally from Sterling, Virginia, but his brother had bought a house in Front Royal, and he didn't live in the house. He lived in Sterling, but he had this house, and so he knew how unhappy I was there, and I was homeschooling my son. And so he's like, you know what? If you want to, you can just live in my house. Don't worry about rent. Just come and live in the house. And so I did. And I came up here with my son and my dogs, and went back to work at Cracker Barrel here in Front Royal, and got my son in a great school. He went to a private day school, which was amazing. And but then there was no more checks and balances for my drink. So, because it's just me, and I would drink and drink, and then the panic attacks started. And I went to see my doctor, and I told him about the panic attacks, and he gave me Xanax.
So you started blacking out.
But he didn't know I was drinking.
Yeah.
So I was drinking and taking Xanax every day. figured out that, at least for me, I wasn't getting any hangovers when I took Xanax. If I hadn't, if I had a hangover, I would just take the Xanax and it's all better. And then I started drinking in the mornings again after I dropped my son off because I would work evenings at Cracker Barrel. Start in the mornings. Sometimes I would have to call a
What's
friend.
that?
I would start drinking in the mornings and I would have to call a friend to pick up my son from school because I would be like, oh, I fell down the stairs or I'm not feeling well. You know, all the excuses that somebody has. Yeah. And then, yeah, that went on for a couple of years. And then my husband retired and came up to Virginia and we bought a house. And we had some marital problems that weren't really working itself out. And my drinking didn't help at all. And then he got a job working for a, what do you call them? Amazon data centers. So the big data centers that Amazon has
Oh,
around here. And he was for their security. So he made a lot of money. But he worked from 2 to 11. And I worked from 5 to 2. So we never saw each other. And you know, the relationship wasn't great anymore. I was unhappy. He was unhappy. And then I would go to work and I worked at a hotel in their restaurant and I'd do the breakfast shift. And after that, I'd go on my break. I'd go to the gas station, get a bottle of wine and drink that on my break, the whole thing, and get back to work. And then do the lunch shift. And on my way home, stop, get more wine, drink another bottle on the way home, and then go home and just black out. And my son, I mean, he was home, but he was always in his room because, you know, just did his own thing. So I literally blacked out. I had made really poor choices when I was young and got submissive sometimes. And then I got a DUI. Well, at first I got a reckless driving while I was drunk. And that was the first time I got arrested. And I couldn't believe it, you know. And a couple of months later, it was Valentine's Day of 2018. I got a DUI, got arrested in my driveway. They followed me all the way home. And I went to rehab after that. And I was sober, I think I had like 101 days. And I started drinking again. Because I didn't go home after rehab. I decided that I wanted to live on my own. And so I did. And yeah, once again, you know, no checks, no balances, nobody there who was going to tell me no, you know. So I
yeah.
started drinking again. And
That
I
went
had to
on
go to,
for a few months.
yeah, well, I went on until I had to go to jail for that DUI because apparently in Virginia, your first DUI is 10 days mandatory jail. And so I had to go to jail for 10 days, which I'm not a jail girl at all. So, and then I was sober for those 10 days and it was great. My daughter picked me up and I was like, yeah, this is great. I went back to where I was living in Winchester at the time and went back to work at Cracker Barrel. And on my way home, I was like, oh man, I deserve a drink. I just went to jail. I deserve it. You know, I'd been going to AA off and on, but since I was drinking, you know, and then there were a few people that were like me, like very like relapsing was a sport, and I'd fall in with them, and then they'd call and be like, "Oh, I'm drinking. You want to come over and we'll drink together?" And I did every time. And I'm surprised I didn't kill myself. The
And now
choices.
we're back up to where we started with December 18th of 2018. Now that you're 6 years into this, what's the reason it's actually working? Are you doing meetings? Do you have a sponsor? Like, what's going on?
So I'm doing meetings again. So when I met my husband, that I'm not the last one, I was doing meetings every day. I was very active in AA. And then he decided that AA was kind of interfering with my faith, and I was like, what? Okay, you know. And like I said, it's very important to me, and the commitment that I made to him and in front of God, that I am his wife and I'm his helper, and I am to make him happy, So I thought, okay, maybe he's right, because so I stopped going to AA. And then I was also in therapy at the time. And I would talk to my therapist, and she would, I would tell her some stuff, and she's like, that just doesn't sound right. There's, and I would go home and I'd tell him about, that. And he decided that maybe I shouldn't do that because it's not working. And I did. I stopped. And now looking back, it's like, okay, so I stopped going to therapy. I stopped going to AA. I was basically just isolated, and so okay, go back a little bit. So I got sober in December of 2018. And then in April of 2021, I got cancer. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I remember I didn't say anything to my children until I knew for sure, that I got the diagnosis after all the biopsies and everything. And I remember I called my daughter and I said, I have cancer. And the first thing she said was, please don't drink.
Please don't what?
Drink.
Okay.
And I was like, I wasn't even thinking of that. It didn't cross my mind. And at that time, I was in a relationship with somebody, and so I had to do a whole bunch more tests and MRIs and more. So when they first found it, it was just one little bit in my left breast, and then they did another ultrasound and everything, and they saw something in the right. So they said, we'd like to do a MRI guided biopsy of the right. And I was like, okay. And he took me because I couldn't drive, and it took about 3 hours because that's just something that takes a while. They have to locate it, so they push you in, and then they see where it's at. They bring you back out. They bring in an ultrasound. They see exactly where it's at. And so I get out, and I'm finally done, and I'm just crushed because, we went from one little thing to now it's in both. And he told me, he said, why did this take so long? And that kind of like, what? And we drove home, and he told me when we got home, he said, I don't know what the big deal is. They're just going to cut him off and you'll be just fine. And I was like, nope, I'm not doing that. And I packed my shit and I left that day. I lived in a hotel because it was in Maryland. I lived in Maryland at the time, and that's where my job was. And my daughter lived down here in Front Row. And she was like, she had already told me before that when she first heard that I had cancer, she said, Mom, when you're going to come live with me. That's just it. I'm going to take care of you and you're going to come live with me. And so it turned out to be very aggressive and very fast. And so we went from, oh, we're just going to take this little bit out to having to have a double mastectomy and having to take in everything. So they took both of my breasts and I was all alone. Nobody was there with me. It was very surreal to wake up and not have that anymore. And that was tough. And not having anybody there.
Did you get back into the program at that point?
After I came, so I was discharged from the hospital, and because it was in 2021, the hospital still, it was actually done at Walter Reed, because I inherited the TRICARE health insurance because I was married to my husband for 20 years military. There's like a 20-20-20 rule, and so we fell under that, and so I have TRICARE. So that was all done at Walter Reed, and my son-in-law came pick me up because nobody was allowed to come into the hospital because of COVID and all that, and brought me to my daughter's house, and she took care of me. I mean, I came out of the hospital with 4 drains in the sides, and that had to be cleaned 4 or 5 times a day and measured to see how much, was draining. And she had 3 kids at the time and was pregnant with her 4th. She had just also taken in my youngest son because his dad met someone on Tinder in Mexico and he moved to Mexico. So yeah. And she just took it all on and took me in, took my son in, took my dogs in. And she just did it all and was pregnant and had a full-time job. And it was just, she is, if I did one thing right, is how I raised my kids. She's amazing. She's an amazing woman. She's great. She is literally my rock. And even now, this time, when I had, and she saw what was going on, and she's just like, I don't like it, Mom. But I had this, because my my faith is so important to me, and I was just so focused on being a good wife and a good helper, and being submissive and just keeping that commitment to God and my husband. And I was so blinded by that I did not see what was literally in front of my eyes. And what should have been red flags when I first met him, and because I was wife number 6. And that should have been a red flag. But, I talked to my therapist about it, and she kind of said, kudos to him that he's still trying to find the love of his life. And, and I thought, you know what? That's true. And I'm a caretaker. So I went there and I cleaned, I cooked, I took care of his boys. I did everything I could. I also worked full time, and he didn't work because he is a veteran and he's disabled. And so I did it all. I really literally did it, everything. And I just didn't want to see what was literally right there. And now looking back, it's kind of like, I kind of think God gave me those signs that I should leave, and I just didn't listen. And I think in the end, he was like, well, fine, I'm going to make you leave, and I did. And But I was really worried about the fact that, because divorce is not something that is biblical, there's exceptions. And so I went and I talked to my pastor. And I asked him about it, and he said, "No, you're good." He's like, he abandoned you. You didn't do anything wrong. He abandoned you. So you're fine. And that really helped me. And then also I talked to a friend of mine who's also a Christian, and she told me the same thing. And she's like, "You didn't do anything wrong. You were a good wife and a good helper." And I was like, okay. And that made me feel much better, because I don't want to be the sinner. I've changed so much since I gotten sober, and repenting is a big part of that. And repent is basically saying, you know change your mind, and don't do it again. So I've been working really hard to get rid of some of these, or trying to get better at these character defects, and just um don't do it no more. And I think that's why it kind of was like the obsession was lifted, and I don't have to do it anymore. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. Yeah. Are you back in AA now?
Yes, absolutely. So I got back on when I came back here to my daughter on that Friday, and that Friday evening I went back to my old AA group. And the old timers that are still there, there's new faces, of course, but the people that I was closest to, they are still there, and they were really happy to see me, because it had been 2.5 years. And they're like, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm back here in front Royal." And they're like, "Well, what happened?" And I told them. And Pete, he's an old timer, and he's just, I love him. He's just an old soul, and he
That's
just
my
looked at
sponsor's name.
and he just looked at me, and he said, "Oh my goodness," he said, "he doesn't know." He said he should have been counting his blessings that you even married him. I was like, "Oh," and that actually meant a lot to me, because those people know me.
How much time does your Pete have? My Pete's got 30 years clean.
Yes.
He has that many too?
Yeah, I think he's got 30 or 32. He's up
Okay.
there. Actually,
Yeah.
he is a speaker tonight at a meeting, and he asked me to be there, and I was like, "I'm so sorry, but I can't." I guess that was after they asked him after I had made this commitment, and I try to keep my commitments. That's important to me. And
Well, I appreciate that.
no, absolutely. And but I go back again. So last year, about October, I got sick again, and had to have a total hysterectomy done. And that was very depressing. Um, After I had that done, I mean, it was hard after the double mastectomy, because, I mean, yes, they put in some, gel stuff and whatever, but it's not the same. Because, I mean, this might be graphic, but I have no nipples. It's just scars. There's a scar down, a scar across. There's no, and then, like I said, at the beginning of this year, they had to take everything else that makes me what I say, a woman. And that was really hard on
Yeah.
me.
My wife had one, and it was really hard for her too.
Yeah. And that was, I got really depressed. Um, and I remember I was telling my then husband, I said, "I'm really struggling." He said, "What are you struggling with?" And I said, I lost my breasts, I lost my womb. What do I have left that makes me a woman? And his answer was something along the lines of, "Well, I have a brain injury."
What's that?
He's like, "I have a brain injury." Okay. What? That doesn't help me. And I think that's when I started kind of like, really? Really? That's it. And the big part of contention that we had was literally his sons. They had 50-50 custody, and I was raised old school. I raised my children old school, so a lot of discipline and accountability. And you make a mess, you clean it up. And if you get something, you could put it back where you got it, because guess what? Next time you know exactly where it's at.
Yeah.
And that was just not right. Me trying to get them to sit at a table right when we eat dinner and not sit on their legs or sit a mile away from the table, or not burping and farting while we're eating, or cleaning up after themselves, or saying bless you when someone sneezes was nitpicking. And then I was told that I was abusing his children. And I was like, what? I've never even raised my voice at them. Well, you look at them mean. What? Like, how is that? And I'm like, but there's always something before that. Like, if I ask you, do not take your game, your Nintendo game to the dinner table, because when we eat, there is none of that. And he takes it and puts it in front of him so he can play while he eats, after I just told him that. Yes, I'm going to look at you mean, because you're disrespecting me. But he always took the side of his children. No matter what it was always him and them against me. And his kids figured out real quick that he doesn't have my back, and that if he's mad at me, then they get all the attention and all the love and all the care. And, daddy's not going to be on his phone the whole time. Daddy's not, and yeah. And then it just came to, yeah.
And when did you divorce him?
We are still married, because I'm trying to see if I can get an annulment done. Because in Virginia, I was looking into it. You can do that still after that amount of time. It just needs to be like a good reason for it. And I think I have one. So
I hope that
yeah,
works
that
out
would
for
be
you.
best, if we could just do that. And because I've been through so much, and I just, yeah, I just want peace. I literally just want peace. And even though, in this house, it's loud, because like I said, my daughter has 4 kids, but it's peaceful. Nobody has to walk on eggshells. Nobody has to be careful what they say or how they look, if it's a mean look, like that was literally how I abused his children, was I looked at them mean. And that is a big word. That is a big word to use for something like that, when I had never even so much as yelled at them, touched, never, ever. I mean, everything they got was from me. I did the play dates. I did taking them to the practices, taking them to the play dates. They would come over here with me to my daughter's house all the time, and we'd have sleepovers. But they never, and I was like, they never came back and said, hey, daddy, she was mean while we were with her. It was always when he was there. Because they knew if they do that, they'll be mad at me. They get the attention. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I was like, you are getting mad at me for my reaction to their disrespect. Like you're getting mad at me for my reaction to your disrespect, And I told them that I was really going to put in some boundaries. And I was like, I will not be watching them anymore. I will not be taking them places anymore by myself. If I do something with the grandkids and they want to participate, you're going to have to go. I will not go out of my way anymore. I will not making 3 dinners anymore. I'm going to cook 1 dinner. If they don't like it, you can make them something else. And a couple days after that, I was okay. drive and do
Are you doing the right thing?
So here we are,
I'm
and
glad you're out.
I'm actually my son and my son-in-law went over there to get the rest of our stuff on Friday, and my son-in-law came back and he said, yeah, he was just like, yeah, just get that out of here because I just want to move on. I want to just get rid of her, rid of me, and move on. And I'm like, I mean, it hurt. It really did. And I was having a really hard time working this past week. I worked from home, and it was kind of hard to
Yeah. No, I work
concentrate.
from home and it can be difficult because sometimes it's easier to up and go to an office
Yeah,
as opposed to live at home.
yeah.
And, I take care of my wife. She's got MS,
I'm sorry.
and
That's
it's a hell of a disease,
mhm.
and trying to split time between, like I said, I have a stepson, he's 10. So during the summertime, making sure he's good, making sure
Yeah.
she's good, making sure I can work still.
Oh, that's a lot.
And I
That is
work
a
11 and
lot.
a half hour days. Um, well, they give me, my work is good because they allow me to take an hour and a half long lunch break every day
That's good.
so that I can attend my noon meeting.
Nice.
So, it's a long day, but I have an hour in that day that I attend NA, and it really helps me reset and recharge for the back half of the 5 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I can
So
see
the mornings are usually hectic. I work for a hospital system scheduling. So we get
that.
inundated with calls and I'm constantly on the phone. I probably answer 80 to 100 calls a day.
Yeah, luckily I only have to answer the phones. I work for an insurance company. Well, not the insurance. I work for a company that handles the claims for the
Yeah.
insurance companies. And so, but we have set times where we're supposed to answer the phones. And so it's only an hour and a half. But for some reason, in that hour and a half is always the most difficult calls. Come on. And there's just stuff that I can't look at or I can't help them with. They need their adjuster, and I'm not an adjuster. So, and the rest of the time, I do paperwork and I read a lot of medical reports and I read work comms for, you know, Pennsylvania and Maryland and all that stuff.
Surprised I haven't talked to you yet then on the phone because we
You
deal
might, you
with
might have to. I work for
yeah.
Broadspire, so.
Okay. Yeah, we deal with people calling in for workers' comp because
Mhm.
I work in orthopedics and podiatry
Oh,
and wound care.
yeah,
And
yeah.
for orthopedics, you
Mhm.
injure your hand at work or your wrist at work or your leg at work. It
Yeah.
all
So,
falls into that category.
and the one thing I have to complain about the Pennsylvania workers' comp is every time I get paperwork from them, they never include the claim number for us. They have the Pennsylvania state claim number, but not the one that I need. So it's always this game of finding that person in my system
Yeah.
because I need to put that in their file. And if I can't find their file, I can't file it. So it gets frustrating sometimes. And Friday, actually, when my son-in-law and my son went to get the stuff, they were like, well, could you watch Emma, which is the youngest, she's 3, and she was just recently diagnosed with autism, and she's nonverbal, and and which I'm used to that because that's how my son was when he was little. But it was kind of funny. I had a meeting and I forgot that I had a meeting, and then they were like, hey, is it okay? We're going to leave now. And I was like, yeah, go now, go now. And as soon as they left, my meeting started. And I was like, and that whole hour in that meeting, she was just not having it. She was not about to do anything that would be quiet but I got through it. I told the person what's going on. They're like, no, you're good. You're good. As soon as I hang up, she is as calm as she could be, just sitting there and watching her tablet and playing with the cones and playing with her toys. And I'm like, you know. And at one point, I went from the office to the kitchen just to grab her a drink, and I come back. It was maybe 30 seconds. In those 30 seconds, she had gotten on my desk and started a document. I have no idea how she did that. She's 3 years old. She needed to move the mouse to a certain place, and she did it all. And I was like, no, no, no. So that was a fun Friday. It was, but it got my mind off that. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I have to say his parent or his mom and his brother and his sister and his aunt, and they're all very loving. And they've been calling me almost every day, and they're like, "Are you okay? We can't believe you did this, and what is wrong with him?" You know, and because I was starting to think that I was crazy, that I was a bad person, that I was doing these things when I wasn't, and I really thought I was, because you're so in that gaslighting,
Yeah.
you know, like
Yep.
that I thought I was going crazy, that I must be a bad person. And I would pray about it. And I'd pray and I'd be like, please soften my heart, please, and then come to find out once you get a little bit away from it. And that's why I said it really meant a lot when Pete said that to me, because he is one of those people that know me, that because I used to go there every single day. And like, no, and I jokingly asked my daughter, I was like, are you okay if I'm around your kids? And she's like, shut up, Mom.
Well, I think you're
So,
doing the right thing. I'm glad you're
yeah,
out
I
there.
think so too. And like I said, I talked to my pastor and I talked to my friend that I used to go to church with. And because we would go to this church and then he wouldn't want to go to that church anymore. And then we'd go to a different church. And he wouldn't want to go to that church. And it was just really, yeah, looking back, it's like, okay. And then I kind of started noticing how he didn't have any longtime friends. Like he would have friends for like a certain amount of time, but then they wouldn't be his friend anymore. And I was like, that's just weird, because I have friends back home, you
Yeah.
know, that we still talk every week, that I've known since I was 3 years old,
Yep.
and we still talk and we're still friends. And whenever I'm back in Germany, it's like, hey, that's all I'm back. I'm in Germany for a certain amount of time. And then everybody's like, we gotta get together. And, you know, one
When you
time,
when you go next year, will that be the first time being in Germany sober?
yes.
Okay. You're looking forward to having that kind of challenge of being in Germany and seeing old friends and not drinking?
No, I think it's going to be just fine. Yeah, because they know. Um, they saw it, but didn't want to say anything. Um, and they're all very proud of me and very happy for me. And, like my brothers and stuff, my sister, they're all really, really happy for me, um, that I have been sober now for that long. And it's nice to have that support from my friends also, because they know, like, one time when I was over there, we had decided, because I was coming to Germany for that 1 month, and my old classmates were like, "Hey, we should do a class reunion. If she's there, we should all get together, because in Germany it's different. You start kindergarten, which and kindergarten's from 3 years old until you're 6, and it's basically a social construct thing where you learn how to socialize, and then at 6 you start first grade. And so the kids I went to kindergarten with were also the same people in my first grade. And then in Germany, you don't like in American schools, you go to this class and then you leave this class and you go to this class, and you might have these people in your class and those people in your class.
Yeah.
No. So we start first grade as the same people in one class, and we graduate basically as that class, and the teachers come to us. We have our classroom and the teachers come to us, but we always stay together, the same people. So basically, from when I was 3 years old until I graduated, it was the same people every
Yeah,
single
it's a
day.
close bond.
Yes. So yeah, and so I went home and we had that, and we all got together and we talked and we had some drinks, and then my brother called and said, "Hey, Eric, my youngest, who's autistic, he's not having it. He really, 'cause he wasn't. It was very new. He was in a different country. He didn't really remember my family, and I was like, okay." So I went home, and it was also my brother's birthday, and so I went home. I went upstairs, and I was like, "Hey, I'm here," and then he was fine. Just knowing that I was there, he was fine. And I went back downstairs, and the doorbell rings, and my brother goes, "Hey, Tanya, there's some people here for you." What are you talking about? And it was my class, and they were like, "Well, shit, we'll come to you. It's a party." And we had a great. I mean, it was just good. I mean, we were all shit things, but it was fun, and that's just, I miss that.
Yeah,
I miss the people that I've known all my life. I mean, I
yeah,
still have my friends here that that I met when I first came here and started living here in 2014, 2015, when I started at Cracker Barrel. I still have friends back in El Paso. Everywhere I've went, I still have people there. So I noticed that he didn't have that, and that was just odd to me. You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yep. No, it's definitely not a. I've had the same best friend since first grade,
See what I mean?
and and I'm 38 years old, so you're talking 20 or 35 years of friendship, 30
Yeah,
years of friendship for a lot of us.
yeah,
And we're still thick as thieves, still
yeah.
text all the time. We don't hang out really because I live 3 hours away,
Yeah.
but
But
we
but
still
there's
talk.
still that bond, and you
Yeah,
still talk to each other. And
yeah,
there was just, and it wasn't even that they moved away; they just stopped talking. And,
yeah,
and then the thing with the churches, that that church, that church, it was just really, really weird. And you know, it was, yeah. His mom was like, "You dodged a bullet, honey. You
when the
just."
mom's telling you that, that's that's a big red flag.
Well, she told me. She said there was a reason why he didn't want you to meet us before you guys got married. I was like, true.
They would have told you to run.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm
And
glad you ran now.
I am too. I mean, like I said, it still hurts because I feel like I was used, but it's it's peaceful, and I like that.
And you get to be with your grandkids.
And I get to see my grandkids whenever I want. We can do all the crazy stuff that we do, and I can go to AA and be with my friends, and I can talk to whoever I want to talk to. Yeah, it was. It's good. It's
Well,
good.
I'm glad I met you, and I'm glad we had the chance to sit down and
It
talk
is
and go
good.
through your
And
story.
yeah,
Um,
it's been fun. I mean, it's been a fun talk, and just so I'm actually, so I do have that restaurant and hotel management thing, but for the past couple of years, I actually worked as a butcher. So um, I worked for Bite Markets. You might know them. They're up in Pennsylvania, some of them. And then I also worked for Harris Teeter
oh, okay,
and,
I've heard of
and
that.
Food Line and Food Line. I worked for Food Line too.
Yeah,
So
when I lived in North Carolina, we had a Harris Teeter, and we had Food Lion. So I'm familiar with them. Harris Teeter is like a more upscale version of
yes,
Food Lion.
yes.
We used to. There was one night I drank a lot when we lived in North Carolina. I was my fiance had committed suicide
Mm,
and moved down North Carolina and started over with my brother. And there was some nights where we would get drunk during the day and then fall asleep by 8 o'clock at night and wake up at 4 in the morning, and we would go to Harris Teeter and get like a pot roast or pulled pork, and we would make pulled pork at like 5 o'clock in the morning. And my
Yeah,
brother is not an alcoholic whatsoever, but
yeah.
I
You would have
definitely
you would
am
have
the
gotten that pot roast from me because I was the assistant meat and seafood manager. So
oh, okay. Yeah,
yeah,
we
I
would
would have
always get
and meat cutting because luckily, I mean, Harris Teeter is one of the few stores that actually still cuts a little bit
yeah, we love
more.
Harris Teeter.
Yeah, they cut more than Food Line. Food Line only cuts like their ribeyes and their strip steaks, but that's the only thing they cut still. Everything else is brought in. And Harris Teeter still cuts a little bit more, and Vice Markets, they still cut a lot. And
Oh,
I
Wise Markets?
yes,
Okay, yeah, we have
WEIS.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yep, WEI, yep, we have that.
yeah, I was a meat manager for them, and well, I was actually hired as the seafood manager and up in Maryland. And then one day they needed somebody to cut meat because the cutter had called out, and I was like, I can do that. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, so they like cut this, and I did. And they're like, why didn't you tell us that? I was like, I didn't think it was a big deal. I grew up. One of my brothers was a butcher, my favorite brother, and he did home butcherings in Germany. So on a Saturday, he would go to a farm or somewhere, and he would kill the pig and butcher the whole, wait for food inspector to come and everything, and then he'd turn it into schnitzel and roast and blotwurst and liverwurst and bratwurst. And my mom was always like, take your sister. So after a while, I started helping him, and that's how I learned. And I just never thought it was a big thing. And then, yeah, within like 2 weeks, I was the assistant meat manager. And then I was the only thing that I had to learn was some of the American cuts are different than the German ones. So that was a few things I had to learn or relearn. But yeah, it was actually fun. I enjoyed my job. I really did. I loved doing what I did. But after I got sick in this last surgery, when they put me on the table, they must have done it wrong. I was positioned wrong or something because I got degenerative disc disease in my neck. And then I started having really bad shoulder pain. And then my left arm just did not work at all. And that's when they did an MRI and they figured that out. So I could not do my job anymore because it's really not safe to be on a saw or a grinder or have a sharp butcher knife when you can't really grip right with your left
Yeah.
hand. And so then I was blessed to have a friend who had a friend and got me this job that I have now. And I'm very grateful and very blessed. And, it's by the grace of God that I'm here. And I know that. I just know that. And so that's a very big part of my life is prayer and just being grateful for what you have and just make the best of it because it can be over so quick. you know um Going through cancer, I just I mean, and I have to say that the medicine that they put you on is not the best. My teeth, as you can see, my teeth are breaking and they're kind of rotting because of the medicine. And I was sick a lot, more sick from the medicine than from the actual um, cancer. But I'm just grateful to still be here and to have that time and see my grandkids grow up and see my kids achieve what they're achieving. And I'm so proud of them, all of them. And my one grandkid, his name's Oliver, and he was born. I got sober in December. He was born in February 2019. And he's kind of like very close to me because he was my first grandchild that never saw me drop, that never was told, no, we're not going to go see Oma because she's, you know. or no, you can't be around the kids. No, you can't watch the kids. No, I don't want you around my kids. So he was my first grandson, my first grandchild that I was sober for. And I'm still sober. And like I said, he's never seen me drunk. By the
So
grace of God, he never will. So,
that's what you are, is Oma.
oh my, yeah, that's the German word for grandma.
Yeah,
And
that's what I was wondering. Is that OMA or OLMA?
no, it's OMA.
OMA, Oma. Okay.
Yes. And also when I lived in South Korea, my friends' kid, my kids' friends would come over and they were Korean and they would call me Oma and I'm like, I am not that old. And then they explained to me in Korean, Oma is mom.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's very, yeah. It gets confusing with all the different languages. But it's also interesting because like I
It
said,
is.
I always try to immerse myself in all of it. And
That's why we spent more than a half of this talking about your history with different countries, because that interests me.
yes. And also my daughter, her husband is Puerto Rican, Dominican, but he grew up in the Bronx. My oldest son's wife, or ex-wife now, she's from Portugal. So we're very, very,
Eclectic.
yeah. And it's just great the way it is.
Yeah.
So we're very happy and very blessed to.
I'm very happy to meet you, Tanya.
And it was a pleasure. I mean, I really am very happy to have done this, and I think what you do is great.
Thank you.
And I really do. I think that is,
I've been
you know,
doing it 3 years now. I love doing it. And,
yeah,
I'm very public about my recovery, and
me too.
I don't hide it. I wear it and I find it's important because, early on in this show, I was obsessed because, I'm an addict. So I was obsessed with the numbers, and I wanted to see the numbers get higher and get more views, and I would get discouraged. And then one night a girl messaged me saying, I just watched 80 of your episodes and I wanted you to know I was going to detox today. Thank you. And, that meant a lot. And then, I have a gambling problem. I quit gambling July 13th, and I posted about it on my page, and someone direct messaged me, about a week and a half ago saying, hey, I looked up Gamblers Anonymous on Facebook and I saw your post, and my husband struggles. Can you send me the information for the meetings you go to? And sure as shit, he was in the last two meetings, last Sunday and today.
And
He
and
was in both meetings.
and I think that is so important because if you keep it to yourself, then how are you going to help people?
Yeah.
And I was always very open with my employers too. And it actually, like when I worked for Vice Markets, there was one time when my boss came to me and said, "Hey, could you would you mind talking to this person?" And I did, and she was in denial still, and she was like, "Oh, I don't have a problem." And I'm like, "Sweetheart, you came to work drunk and you fell asleep on the prep table." And she didn't have a problem, da 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 da. And sadly, a couple months later, she died. But I've always been very open, and even and what I realized with because some people when you say AA, they're like, oh, it's a cult, oh, I don't want nothing to do with AA, and oh, and the steps and da-da. So I just tell them about the promises, and that seems to work better than telling them about step one, step two, and telling them about the promises, and that it can work. And another important thing that I talk to people about you know when they either want me to talk to them or somebody tells me, could you? And they're like, oh, well, I drink because I want to. And I'm like, and that's fine. That's great. I just want to let you know that there's going to come a point when you drink because you have to. And you're not going to know when that is.
Yeah.
It's just going to happen. And then all of a sudden, you have to drink.
Yep.
So you want to look out for that, but like I said, when I tell them about the promises, it has more impact, at least for me, for others, than telling them about the steps and the sponsors and all that. But if I can just help one person, that's, you know, if I can, you know, like I'm not the youngest anymore, and I was drinking heavily for 10 years. And I always thought when I went to these to the AA meetings in the beginning, they were like, well, if I can do it, you know, everybody can. And I was like, you have no idea what I'm going through, you know. And now I'm that person sitting in an AA meeting saying, well, shit, if I can stop, you
Yeah.
can stop.
Yep.
And I had that really bad fear of, well, shit, if I stop drinking, I will never have fun again. I will never have fun.
And yet you learn how to laugh in AA.
Oh, yes.
You
Oh,
learn how to laugh again, because we forget how to laugh in addiction.
oh, yeah. It
And
wasn't fun at all. There
yeah,
was nothing fun about it. It was just miserable. I drank by myself.
yep. But
I,
when you find the rooms again, you learn how to laugh again.
I mean, and I go to the Moose with my friends, and I go and have fun, and I go do stuff, and I'm not worried about it. You know, I don't mind going to the Moose and doing some line dancing, or, you know, I'm very uncoordinated, but that doesn't stop me. And it's cheaper, because most of the time, if I go up there and I'm like, hey, I'll take a Diet Coke, or I'll have a soda water, they're like, oh, don't worry about it. It's
Yeah.
on the house. You know, I don't have to pay anything. So I get to have fun and get to drink for free. I mean, soda or whatever. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. And to look back, like I said earlier, the changes that come in you, like through time, your outlook just gets better, and you just are happy, you know, and the content. And I could have never, you know, I was always so worried to run out of out of alcohol. Well, I only have this bottle, and what am I going to do when that's gone? You know, no. Why would I want to live like that? You know, it's like, yes, I went to jail for 10 days, but basically I was in jail for 10 years drinking and not taking responsibility for anything that I did or said, you know. And now it's just way too much to give up. You know, I don't want to alone the trust that my children have in me and my grandchildren, that I'm not going to do that, you know. And when I got sick again, I found it when I told my daughter or my children, there wasn't that question anymore. You're not going to drink, right? Like the first time, it was just not even even, I don't know, there was a party or something, and I was going to a birthday party, and they texted me. They're like, hey, Tanya, can you pick up a 6-pack for us on the way, or a 20-pack or something? And I was like, what the hell's wrong with you? But I did. And that had been like the first time I bought alcohol in like years. And it was weird, but I did. And I went over there and I handed it to them. And I said, you know, you just texted an alcoholic and asked her to buy alcohol. They're like, oh, shit, we forgot. And I was like, no, it's fine. At least, you know, that's not the first thing you think of when you think of me. You know?
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm actually kind of flattered that it wasn't, oh, we can't ask her, she's an alcoholic. You know, they were like, oh, shit, Tanya's on her way. She can just pick them up. So it was, yeah. But I'm sorry. I'm going on a tangent.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
It was great talking to you, Tanya.
It was great talking to you. And like I said, I admire you. Hats off to you. You do for what you're doing and taking care of your wife. You are a saint, and you're a blessing. You're a blessing to the alcoholics and the addicts, and especially your wife and your stepson. I mean, that's just amazing that you do all that.
I try.
You are a blessing to, I think, a lot of people.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you so much. You have a blessed night.
You too.
All right. Bye.